Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this morning, Buying a Business with Nancy Hahn and Amber Kellogg. We're going to get started in just a few minutes, but I wanted to give us some time to enter the webinar. Once we get started, I'll give you guys some housekeeping and some ground rules, and we'll get started. It's 10 o'clock right now. So thank you for joining us. My name is Donna McCown. I'm the operations manager for the Maricopa SBDC, and we have Nancy Hahn, who is a CARES business analyst, and we have Amber Kellogg, who is a lending business analyst. And they're going to talk about buying a business. Before we get started, I wanted to just give a few little housekeeping. If you do have any Q&As, please type them in the Q&A box so it doesn't get lost in the chat. And we'll be taking those questions at the end of our presentation. And yeah, I guess that's about it.
Thank you, Donna.
Go ahead, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started. We've got a lot of information to go over, so I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully everyone can see that. Like Donna said, welcome. This is a really very informative seminar that you'll be watching today, and if you're planning on buying a business, this is a great place to start. So we're going to go ahead and, I'm just going to tell you that there's an interesting statistic out there that it will probably shock you. Only 2% of buyers ever end up buying a business. And that's because there are a lot of moving parts to it. It can be very emotional. You're spending a lot of your own money and time and investment to purchase a business, and then it's your lifestyle after that. So it's a big decision. And I just have found that when people work with the SBDC, and myself in particular, and Amber, and get a lot of preparation beforehand, that they're much more informed and much more likely to end up buying a business. So if that's your dream, you're in the right place. Like I said, there's a lot of information to go over, and I'm going to try to go over that as quickly as possible. And I'd like to start by introducing myself. I am a business analyst with the SBDC, and my background has always been entrepreneurialism. I've owned 7 businesses, one of which was a nonprofit. And I bought and sold those businesses myself. 2 of them were in foreign countries, so that was a whole other journey. But so I have a lot of experience with that. And then I did use a business broker for one of them, and then I became a business broker, and I did that for 2 years. So I've had a lot of background as far as the process and what you go through personally, and then actually ending up with a business. Another interesting statistic I'll throw out too is that only 30% of businesses ever sell. So, and I can explain that in a little bit, but, and now I will introduce Amber, and she is our funding analyst. Take it away, Amber.
Thank you. Thanks, Nancy. I always enjoy working with Nancy. I appreciate that. My name is Amber. I'm a business funding analyst with Maricopa SBDC. We're a resource for small business financial literacy. Wow. We guide, educate, and support small businesses to know how to be a financial leader of your business. You'll hear us say that a couple of times throughout our presentation. Before working for the SBDC, I worked with JPMorgan Chase for about 10 years. And prior to that, I worked for the Limited Brands, which I was managing businesses. I alternated between the 2 divisions, Bath & Body Works and Victoria's Secret, for just over 14 years, running businesses, running all over the United States, actually. We moved to 7 different states with that career, and finally called Arizona home about 13 and a half years ago. I do have a passion for helping businesses. This is one of our favorite things to do, being able to educate our clients. I love to see businesses flourish, and I know what it takes to sacrifice and what it takes to succeed as a business owner. So thanks for welcoming us. Thank you. I guess we have a little bit more to do before we begin our presentation. We want to tell you a little bit about the SBDC. It's a Maricopa Small Business Development Center. We are part of a statewide network, America's SBDC Arizona, which is accredited by the nationwide America's SBDC. Our Maricopa Center is funded through a cooperative agreement with the US SBA, which is the Small Business Administration. We enjoy also productive partnerships with the City of Peoria, the Arizona Commerce Authority, and we have locations throughout the entire state of Arizona. Our mission is to guide, educate, and support businesses, from pre-venture clients to people who just don't have an idea, to businesses that have been in existing for a long time. We have a no-fee counseling that focuses on launching, growing, and sustaining small businesses. On our next slide, we'll take a look at what technical assistance we provide as well. You see here that there's a list of technical areas that we provide assistance in. Our team of business analysts have extensive experience in many industries, as well as technical assistance in the areas that you see listed here. Don't worry if you don't see your industry listed here. We have a wide range of resources that we provide assistance to. And every time I see this slide or I do this slide, Nancy, I always think of that commercial, do we have an app for that? So I laugh and I say, we have an analyst for that. So don't worry about it, because the Maricopa SBDC offers research training in a lot of different industries. And we for sure will find an expert in that industry for you, and the resource to help you develop your business. The resources, again, this is kind of a cool slide because it shows you a little bit about a couple of things that we have the access to, that we help our clients have access to. Growth Wheel and Live Plan, those are some really great things for development and creating your business plan. Profit Sense and IBIS World are really great tools as well. The SBDCnet.org is also a tool that we use to help with some research. These are resources that we provide to our clients through our counseling sessions to help with the business development. I think Nancy's going to start with our presentation. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, Amber. That was great. Yeah, the SBDC has a lot to offer. So the buying process, like I said, is a pretty complex process. And so we've tried to break it down into two sections. The first section is actually preparing and finding the business that you are choosing. And then the second one is the actual process of, making the offer and transitioning your business. So we've tried to keep it simple, and we will be going over right now the first phase. And one of the most important questions that you can ask yourself at this point is, why do you want to buy a business? There's all kinds of reasons why somebody would choose to buy a business. But most often you've been thinking about it for a long time. I really encourage you to go deep in your motivations. As a business broker, I often found that buyers would be up late at night. They were mad at their boss, and they were on the computer saying, I'm going to buy a business. I'm tired of this. And so that is not really the best way to buy a business. It's very, there's a lot of investment made emotionally, physically. It's a lifestyle change. You have to really have all of your key people, like your family, involved in this decision, because you can spend a lot of money and you may not be successful. So that's always, something to consider. That's why buying a business that's up and running is typically much safer than starting a business from scratch. But if you're like me at all, my father was an entrepreneur, a very successful video security business owner, and it treated him very well until his retirement. And so it can be a really great long-term investment of your time and money. And some people, like myself, I was a serial entrepreneur. Some people like starting them and selling them. Other people like to grow them slowly and then hopefully prepare for a sale eventually and when you're ready. But oftentimes you are faced with possibly selling your business quickly And that can be a problem. Like I said, only 30% of businesses sell. So my encouragement to you is, if you do buy a business, to always act as if you're going to be selling it. You could have to, from you know, a health standpoint or some kind of change in your situation. So if you always are keeping your business in a for sale ready position, you'll always be ready to sell. And that's the best way you can position yourself. And SBDC can help you along the way as well. And so, you know, really determining why and having great motivation, because when you undertake this process seriously, you're going to be required to jump through a lot of hoops, and it can usually take, you know, a year or sometimes longer to buy a business. So it's a long-term investment of your time and energy. It can be fun to look for a new business, and you know, thinking about what your lifestyle is like now and what you would like it to be in the future determines what type of business you'd like to buy. So a lot of you are probably familiar with Biz Buy Sell. That's one of the main platforms here in Arizona that sellers use to sell their businesses, as well as brokers. But when you do decide, you know, sometimes people want to buy a business, like if somebody loves bikes and they love repairing bikes and they want to be around bikers, you know, then they may just know absolutely that they want to buy a bike business, which, by the way, is a really nice little business to have. But other people have no idea what they want to do. And so you really have to, you know, I would encourage you to say you think you might want to be a groomer. And so I would encourage you to, you know, visit groomer shops, look into the industry, do every kind of research you can possibly do, talk to people, you know, look at the competitors. Keep in mind that some of these businesses require a lot of employees, and that is a big challenge in and of itself for most business owners. That can be one of the key challenges, actually. So are you a good manager? Do you want a business where you're, you know, managing employees? And then looking at the future growth. Speaking of the video security business that my father had, my brother-in-law and sister started a video security business here in Arizona. They ended up selling it for 1.2 million. Those people went out of business, and they lost a lot of money because they were corporate people and they didn't manage it well. But that business also went away, basically, because now you can go to Costco and just pull it up on your phone. So within a very short period of time, they would have had to change course with how they were doing business, because they focused on small mom and pop convenience stores, 24-hour recording, and that's a very simple thing now to buy. They don't need a business for that. So really, I would stress to you that making sure that the future, which is changing rapidly and constantly, as we've seen, especially with COVID, you know, is it something that's going to sustain you in the long run, if that's what you're looking to do? Another thing I'd like to just bring up here is that what I found is that non-serious buyers didn't really want to adhere to the non-disclosure, which is also called an NDA. This is a form that you sign either through the seller or the business broker, stating that you will not jeopardize their business by the knowledge that they receive from the seller. And I'm saying that this is really important and taken to take very seriously, because as a seller, number one, you're opening up yourself to a stranger, maybe not an even very serious stranger, and you're letting them see how you operate your business. And it's a very sensitive issue for many sellers, because it's like opening up your personal laundry. There's good stuff, there's bad stuff, ugly stuff, there's competitive stuff that they don't want out there. Another thing that happens is that word gets out on the street. So you could be just casually telling your brother that you're thinking about buying the dry cleaners up the street, and he might, tell the employee, hey, I heard you're selling. And the employee will freak out. Actually, that did happen to me one time. And, as a seller, you're really trying to keep things very low key and quiet, because you don't want your competitors and your employees knowing that you could be selling, because they can take advantage of that. So this is a very serious contract. When you sign it, you can be sued if you, go outside of the guidelines, which is basically don't tell anyone anything until you have that under contract, or even until you're ready for the transition. So this is just one form that you would be signing. That's something that's a real key. One of the things that you can do is with the SBDC, we are here to help you in your search and in your process. And in fact, I've been working with several clients who come to me, and we prepare them, Amber and I, completely so that they can go out with confidence and make offers on these businesses and know exactly what to expect. And if there's anything that comes up along the way, all they have to do is make an appointment with us and go over, what's happening, and we can help them along the way. So I encourage you to use the SBDC kind of like your coach to, help you with each step of the way, because there's, like I said, a lot of things to keep track of, and it's a very emotional experience for sellers and buyers to go through, the process. And so we have IBIS World and Growth Wheel, which can help you do research and then actually do your own numbers. And you can look at biz by sell for what's out there. You can compare, the business prices. And BizQuest is another one that's owned through Biz by Sell. DealStream. Biz by Sell is by far the #1 platform here in Arizona, though. If you're looking outside of the state, those other ones, there's several that you can access. And then the industry reports we can provide through IBIS World. And then, your just personal observation of future, industries, and then question business owners, not, they typically will not have a problem, especially if they don't feel that you're going to be, taking away business from them. So really make sure that your research is thorough. And then this is where we start to talk with Amber about, really looking at your financial situation. In fact, when you sit down with Amber, she can help you really understand whether you're prepared to make an offer, because I've done this myself. I have said at different points in my life, I'm going to buy a business. I'll let the seller finance. I'll come up with the money. There's always SBA. And the reality is that sellers never want to finance. And if they do, they're probably only going to finance maybe half of it, if they even do that. I would encourage you to have them finance at least 20% so that they have some skin in the game and they, are helping you to succeed. But if you think you're going to go in with no money and, figure it out, potentially I can just say that you probably are going to waste a lot of people's time, including yourself. And so I would, just kind of take a check and check in with Amber and I, and make sure that you're positioned. Wouldn't you say that's right, Amber?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So on here, the questions, these are great questions. What can you afford to buy? How much, can you afford? What's your budget? Budget is a huge thing that business owners need to make sure they do. I always say that it's important to do that personally, because when I was in banking, like, we wanted our clients to have a personal budget, right? And then my business owners, I wanted them to have a business budget. That's huge. We need to know how much, we can afford, and we need to know what our budget is. And then how much money we need to make to be able to afford what we're trying to finance, right? So these 3 questions that are on this slide are huge. And then the other piece of this slide too is the projections. So on the projections, I'm sorry, Nancy.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. The projections piece is we pull from Profit Sense, is one of the tools that we have shown here. And actually, that's something that we need to make sure that we are mindful of. And when Nancy said a minute ago about as business owners, we have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. We need to know how much money we need to make to afford what we're trying to afford, right? And just to add my 2 cents on this slide too, a lot of times business owners put the cart before the horse. We always think, well, we know we need money, but we don't really know how much. Everybody thinks that they need money, but we really have to sit with you and break it down just to see, okay, we know your why, you've done your research. Now we need to assess your money situation. So let's really break it down. Let's look at your budget and see how much you need to borrow, how much you need to make so you can pay back, because the terms and conditions matter, right? If we need to make sure we can pay it back. You want to know something really cool, bro? We can help you with that too, right? So that's one of our tools with the Profit Sense. It's the financial projections piece, and we can help you with that. But again, you have to put in the work as a business owner to know I have to serve this many people a day at this average sale to make this money to pay back the loan, right? There's a process to that. So, and we'll go into what you need to secure a loan in the next couple of slides.
So these are some of the different options that people typically think of when they're, thinking about buying a business. Number one, you can use your own money. Now, you may have $150,000 for your retirement, and you're going to use that cash to buy a business. And that's very risky, obviously, because you don't know if it's going to succeed. So a lot of times people are hesitant to use their own money, but you will have to use some of your own money. And I would say if you have $150,000 cash or $200,000 cash, a lot of times if you have the right collateral, and Amber will go over this, you should probably buy a bigger business, because the bigger businesses are more successful. They have more financial credibility. They have employees in place. So imagine, if you have $200,000 and you buy a $200,000 business, that business may be making, $75,000 a year. That you're going to earn $75,000. That's like a job. But if you have $200,000 and you qualify for an SBA loan, you could buy, I don't know, $1 million business that's, got great revenues and, employees in place. Those are the kind of businesses. In this situation, the more you can afford, typically the better off you're going to be. And then, seller finance, we went over. Most sellers that I've ever talked to absolutely do not want to finance. They want to cash out. They don't want the responsibility. And I don't really blame them, because you may or may not succeed. And you will have.
Yeah, I was just thinking, it just makes you think there's a reason why they're selling, right? So they want to, exit the game. But
yeah, and another interesting statistic is that they're predicting a tsunami, and particularly now with business sales, because a lot of people are selling because they're baby boomers and they want to retire. I ran across a lot of people that had suddenly health issues. So there are a lot of sellers out there, and they don't necessarily want to, but that'll be part of your negotiations, that you get them to finance something, whatever you can get them to finance. And, SBA may make up the other part, but it may not. So, and there's always other money sources. If the business isn't that expensive, you could buy a little landscaping business or pool service business for $50,000 with the intention of just growing it. You're not going to make a lot of money, but you could maybe put it on credit cards, maybe borrow it from your friends and family. We always encourage you to look at all other resources before you go for an SBA loan, because they're not that easy to get. And Amber will go over that. But, any kind of loan or even outside financing of any sort will require, collateral and, a lot of hoops to go through. So whatever you can do upfront to fund it, that's great. Unless you're buying a bigger business. And then, you can always use your home equity credit line along with other, some people use GoFundMe and those types of things. We don't really recommend that. But anyway, Amber is going to talk about what it is that lenders actually do look for.
Yeah, you know, if it's okay, I just wanted to add a couple of things into the previous slide. It's not always necessary to secure a loan. And like you said, Nancy, those other options, using your own money, seller finance, those kinds of things, my lender friends are probably cringing. But the last thing we want is for our business owners to go into debt, right, before they go start their business. Lenders we don't want them to bite off more than they can chew, right? And go bankrupt in a few years, because that's not what we're trying to do. We want them to be able to afford to pay back whatever loan they're trying to do. And going back to that budget that we talked about earlier, we could come up with enough money to affordably get started. And when I say comfortably, I say that very loosely, because we understand that starting a business, money is usually strapped, right, for the first couple of months. So there's sacrifices that need to be made, and gosh, even a few months to a year. But being mindful of what your budget is and where we can make cuts without losing your vision, right? Like, we want to make sure that our vision is good, is still where it needs to be. But if we tighten up our belts and sacrifice a little and not have to lend, I mean, that's a better case scenario. Like you said, Nancy, if you have $150,000, maybe we don't need to borrow so much money. And that's called bootstrapping, my friends. Like, that's what, you know, we would have to do to tighten our belts, right? So if you ever hear that term, that's what that means. We're tightening our belt. We want to make sure that, you know, we're not having to go into debt, because that's really not what we want. We want you to be able to pay back that loan, but also we have tools for that. But anyway, I just wanted to add those 2 cents before we go into the next slide. Thank you, Nancy. As you see here, the 3 C's. Now, as a business funding analyst, we always try to educate our business owners. And the one thing that I always go over when somebody talks about lending is what banks look for. And I break it down this way. Most lenders talk about the 5 C's of credit lending, right? I've just found in my experience that when you go over 5 C's, kind of after the 3rd C, it just kind of skates over people's head. And, you know, lenders start using lender speak and acronyms that nobody really knows what the heck they're talking about. And so they lose interest after the 3rd C, right? So like, my tire guy knows tires, right? My burger guy knows burgers. But so I just come up with these 3, and it's just my experience that they're the most important things. And these things are things that lenders can't mitigate, or they can't look past, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So getting ready to talk to lenders is overwhelming as it is. So understand that lenders go through much more risk assessment. They do a SWOT analysis, you know, that kind of thing. So if you do these 3 things and we self-evaluate, then we're in good shape, and then we can move forward. Okay. So the first C in that red circle there is credit. Lenders want to make sure that you're credit worthy. I don't know if you guys heard that term before, but if you have, credit worthiness is something that is one of the first things that we need to look at. Because the first thing as a lender, when I was a lender at Chase, is, you know, are there any credit opportunities, right? And when I ask that question, I'm asking, are there anything that's going to hold us up, right? Keep in mind, this means bad credit or no credit. Now, due to fair lending, banks have to take your application, whether, you know, whatever anybody applies, but because they can't discriminate, right, due to fair lending laws. But it's not so easy to secure a loan if you have good or bad credit and without credit history. Now, I'm sure you're wondering where that sweet spot is. Well, 680 is usually what we always try to say is a good credit score, but don't fret. If you have a credit score of like 640, then some lenders will consider you if you have the ability to explain why it's at 640, right? So make sure to be able to preempt that strike, because we want to be able to explain that. Don't try to hide it, because people try to do that all the time. But guess what? If it's on your credit, underwriters are going to find that. Your terms may not be as favorable, but that's okay, because as a higher score, but at least you're getting your loan. At least they're going to try to come to some sort of resolution with your terms and conditions through an alternate lender or something like that. Bankruptcies, short sales, foreclosures, and even late payments are credit challenges, or those opportunities that I was talking about that are often hard to overcome. Now, does that mean that you'll never get lending? No, it just means that it's going to be a little bit harder for us to come up with. Those are considered high risk challenges. And you'll hear that a lot in lending is risk. Lenders don't usually want to take on anything that's not acceptable risk, right? So they want to look at your business to make sure that it's a good business and that it makes sense and they're not taking any risk. So It is best to check your credit score for both your personal and your business, because you become the personal guarantor. This will tell you whether you need additional guarantors to help you secure the loan, or if we need to come up with a different action plan other than lending, because if we can't secure a loan, then we need to come up with something different, like the list that Nancy showed us earlier of coming up with the funding. Now, our second C is cash flow. Lenders want to see that your business has the ability to pay back the loan. We talked about that a minute ago. And we want to make sure that what you're requesting, you have enough money to stay afloat, right? Now, of course, there's a calculation to that. Lenders like calculations, and we use a few items that we can add back and that kind of thing. But if you're not showing a profit, then it's probably a good indication that it's going to be harder for you to get a loan. It's not going to be something that lenders are going to consider, because if your financials are not showing that you're making any money, why would they lend to you? Because you can't afford to put, to pay back the loan that you're trying to do. Now,
Amber, I'd like to just interject here.
Yeah.
A lot of sellers of small businesses don't show cash flow.
Yes.
And the reason they don't is because they're trying to save money on taxes.
Right.
It's a conundrum that you may face, and that would devalue the business right there.
You're so right. You're so right. And I always tell Nancy, I always tell our business owners that partner with your CPA. Like if we know that we're trying to buy or sell our business or buy our business, whatever direction you're coming from, having your CPA know that information is important, because they can do some things a little bit different, because they're really good at, making us not have so many tax implications, right? But if we're trying to buy a business, we need to show that there's some green in there, and not that we're breaking even or we're coming up negative, right? So partnering with a CPA is something we do as well. Like we have clients that if they don't do their books, they partner with their CPA, and we tell them kind of like what we need to see. And if it's 6 months to a year for them to help get to that point, then we help guide and support them to do that. So that's such a great point too. Now, a good rule of thumb when we're looking at cash flow, and because Nancy said to show cash flow, now pre-COVID, it was different than kind of post-COVID. So understand that there's some risk involved with people staying in business, but pre-COVID, bankers or lenders want to see for every dollar that you're wanting to borrow, that you're making a profit of at least $1.25. Okay, so that kind of gives you a little bit of insight or a visual of what lenders wanted to see. And that was actually pre-COVID. That was kind of a standard. But lenders have tightened the reins, obviously, since COVID, and their appetite for risk. So if you hear a lender say, we don't have an appetite for this particular business, it's because they don't want to take on that risk. And a lot of them are now looking to see that, we call it a ratio, we call it a debt ratio, to be for every dollar you're requesting, it's on the average of $1.50 now. Now, it kind of seems a little crazy that it seems like, if I'm making money, I don't need to borrow money. But the whole point of that is you need to show that you're able to make the money to pay back the money. And so that's kind of what it is.
And afford your lifestyle.
And afford your lifestyle. Absolutely. Absolutely. They need to see your business has potential, financial potential for long-term. Not just, to get you by for the next year. They don't want to just float you. They want to make sure that you're going to be successful moving forward, because they don't want you to go out of business, right? Keep in mind that they look at the state of your personal financials as well. And if you look at it this way, if you fold, right, if the business closes, you have to personally make enough money to pay off that loan, because that's the risk that they're trying to not take on. So that's why they take on all of that. They do that whole SWOT analysis, right? And now that we have the credit score and we make the cash flow needed to secure the loan, the third C is collateral. Lenders want to see that you have skin in the game. Nancy said that earlier. Now, there's no such thing as 100% financing. There's just not, unless you go to hard money lending, and those terms and conditions aren't always great, and that's not always guaranteed that it's 100% financing. But they want to know what you bring to the table. I mean, do you have assets that you can, throw in as some sort of collateral? How much money have you already put in the business? Make sure you keep those receipts. Make sure you keep track, and you're separating your personal from your business, and it's not commingling funds, because we need to be able to show that, what skin you put in the game. And of course, we call that equity. What equity have you put into your business? up to this point. Now, of course, it depends on the type of loan that you're trying to apply for. Your all business assets or ABA, and the business owner is the personal guarantor. So keep in mind. And a second ago, we also mentioned that if you can't pay back the loan, the owner assumes responsibility for the balance of the loan. Just, you got to keep that in mind. That's why I always tell my friends, my business owners, to not quit your day job. Just don't quit your day job, because lenders want to see outside income, and that your business is not just what your business is making or what you're making as income in your business. And Arizona is a community property state, so they'll take in consideration your spouse's or your partner's income, as well as owners, whether they're owners or guarantors or not of the loan. So of course, if it's a real estate loan, the real estate would be collateral, right? Because it's tangible, it's property, right? It's real estate and itself is collateral. But it's an equipment loan. Equipment is very situational. You will not get 100% financing for equipment, but the equipment is partially used as collateral. But it is situational. It depends on so many things when it comes to equipment itself. So there's a lot of things that we could use for collateral, but money down, bottom line, money down is required. Nancy said that a minute ago. And it is anywhere from, and I heard, I was on an SBA call the other day, and they said anywhere from 10 to 50%, the average is 30%. But we have honestly seen 20% down is kind of the average. So that all depends on the type of loan, the terms and conditions you need, your credit worthiness that we talked about earlier, and a list of other things that are usually lender specific. But there's a lot of things that go into that. But educating yourself and knowing at least these 3 C's are really important. And now that we understand that, we can self-evaluate whether we feel like we have the green light to continue, right? So either way, we're here to help you to get through. So this slide shows you kind of, and it's really small, and I'm sorry, we tried our best to chop it up so you can kind of see, but the left side is a lender list for what we need from your business. Now the right side is what we need typically from your personal side, right? So there's a long list here, and we're all about tools. So we try to give you the tools. I'm all about having a really good tool belt when I'm a business owner. So everyone usually panics when they have to go to a lender. And I know that this is a very detailed list, but don't freak out. It does seem like a lot, but I have to tell you, even if we collected everything that's on this list, 9 times out of 10, a lender's going to come to us and say, hey, we need ABC. We need more things. So I tell my business owners up front, so they don't get frustrated. Don't be surprised if we're going to ask for more information. If anybody's ever bought a home, at the 11th hour, they need, 10 more documents, right? So that's typically the way it goes. When you're thinking about borrowing a lot of money, lenders just want to make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's, right? So
yeah, and that brings up a good point, Amber, about real estate. This is not like buying a home. You don't go out and get pre-approved
yes,
on a home that you can afford up to X amount of money. Unfortunately, lenders require that you actually go out and find a business first, and then they'll analyze the financials and give you kind of a preliminary, this is something we can fund.
Yep. Yeah.
And so it's kind of a catch-22 in that regard.
It is. Just like I said earlier, the cart before the horse, right? We're like, okay, we want to go see what we qualify for. Well, it doesn't really work that way. It does in mortgage, but not for business lending, because there has to be something collateralized that we can go off of, right? So that's such a great point. Yeah. And I always tell my business owners, just so they don't get frustrated, like, we have to come up with all this information because the lender has to make that educated risk analysis, right? They want to make sure. Typically, as a business funding analyst, we always ask for just a couple of things up front, just to do a preliminary review. We want a comprehensive business plan, which is listed on here. Or we give you access to Live Plan, which you saw as one of our tools in a couple of slides previously, and help you do that. Now, we don't write your business plan. We give you the tools to help you do it, but we review it. We make sure there's no punctuation or spelling errors and it looks good and, that kind of thing. But the business owners have to write it, right? So we also ask for cash flow projections. Typically, the first 2 years, we want to see monthly, and then the third year, it could be quarterly. Your current balance sheet, current profit and loss statement. Now, if you're purchasing a business, like Nancy said earlier, that hush document or the NDA that you have to sign, excuse me, they will give you their financials if if they're open to you buying it, if they feel like you're being serious about purchasing your business.
Yeah, and they usually give preliminary financials up front that a banker can look at and kind of get a general idea. But then after you make the, you may get the financials in full before you actually make
Right.
an offer, but that's pretty sensitive and not always works that way. I think
Well,
due to time, I think maybe we can go on to the next slide.
Yeah,
Is there
absolutely.
anything else, Amber? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so we're now moving into the second phase. You have gone through all the different steps, and now you're ready to make an offer or find a business. That's what you're going to need to do, at that point. And then I just put this in here because I do want to let you know this is one of the key factors that you are going to look for when you're buying a business, and you're going to look for motivation. Why are the sellers selling? Because if they're not motivated, and health issues unfortunately are a great motivator. They have to sell fast, they can't take their time, but sellers often start out wanting to have the highest price. And if they're not motivated, if they're not ready to retire, or they have some very good reason. And so I just want to let you know, if you can ask gently the seller or the business broker why they're selling and get a good idea, that will help you. And they're looking for motivation on your part as well. So as Amber mentioned, having support resources as you're going through this process is going to be really important. You have your SBDC counselors available for you, in many, many different ways. Your accountant, as Amber said, is very important. Now, I do want to make a point that accountants do not like when you buy businesses. They don't tend to ever see, I don't want to say ever, but they often will talk you out of it because they're not seeing the kind of, revenue, and they can give you a very different picture. So if you feel in your gut that this is a good thing and you know it, the accountant can guide you and help you with questions, but don't rely on them to answer like whether you should buy it or not, because they see it in a very different way, and as well as attorneys do. But an attorney is going to help really button up the protection, because there's a lot of potential litigation that can come from buying and selling a business. Tons. And so that's why we as our business brokers have a lot of paperwork protecting themselves, the seller, hopefully the buyer, because there's a lot of things that can come up along the way. So if you have an attorney or don't, we can recommend one, but definitely look at that. And then of course, working with a business broker, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a bit. So business brokers generally are in the business to make money, and they make a lot of money if they're good. So they're not, they usually represent the sellers. I don't know many brokers that a buyer can say, hey, will you find me a business? That's not where they make their money. They don't have time. And it's, basically your job to go out and find the business that you want, unless they have it in their listings. But what's interesting is they often will be dual agency, which is frowned upon in the real estate arena, but in this profession, they maybe won't even do business with an outside broker. So your buyer may not even be able to get that business for you because they're an outside agency. And the reason they do that is because of the complexity of the sale. If you're working with a broker or a realtor, which knows nothing, they know nothing about buying a business, they could lose the sale because of the inexperience. So oftentimes they want to keep everything. Obviously, they make a lot more money. Their commissions are typically around 12 to 14% of the total sales. So you can imagine they're making a lot of money. But always remember, if they're representing the listing, they will represent you. It's their fiduciary duty to represent you, tell you the truth. But just keep in mind, they're not working for you. They're working for the seller. So you have a lot of due diligence on your part, unless you have a really good broker that's representing, and they do dual agency. So what a business broker really is they're an intermediary. They don't sell businesses and they don't buy businesses. They help the seller and the buyer not kill each other, because and they're like a cushion. because there's a lot of emotions going on during this process, and there's a lot of hurt feelings, and there's a lot of distrust possibly. There's a lot of those things. So, and I have worked directly with sellers and buyers. It's touchy because you or they can lose trust, and then you don't believe anything they say or whatever. So an intermediary basically is a buffer. It's like having a mediation attorney when you're getting divorced, something like that. So the two parties don't have to directly confront each other. Business brokers do have to have a real estate license, so look for that, but they're not realtors. I mean, they can sell the land along with the business. Some realtors choose not to do that, but they do in Arizona, at least. They have to be realtors. And like I said, brokers don't normally look for businesses for you, but they will, represent you if they have a business that you're involved in. So once you find the business that you've decided on, you're going to go ahead and make an offer. And this is the part where everybody really, gets kind of nervous. Most people don't like to negotiate, but just know that it's the selling price, and the seller's price is usually inflated because they think it's worth, $1 million. The buyer is obviously going to want to be able to be successful and pay their loan back. So what we always say is that the selling price is actually whatever the seller and the buyer agree to. It's not written in stone. There is nothing and no one that will ever come together as a group and all agree that this is worth that. You could have the accountant say it's worth one thing, your broker say it's worth another thing, the seller. I mean, there's no real hard answer to what the business is worth. Let me just tell you and remind you, 30% of businesses don't sell. So you are in a good position to negotiate unless it's a really hot business that everybody's wanting. So you're going to go ahead and make an offer. They always recommend that you come in low, obviously, and kind of feel out the seller. Don't come in too low because that's going to make them mad. Once you make a seller mad, it's very difficult to make the transition complete. And I have had a lot of people, go into, you want to treat a seller with kid gloves. No matter how much you can't stand them, or maybe if you love them, just treat them like they are gold and that they are the smartest people in the world, because it's all about ego. When you're selling a business, your ego is, it's like your baby. You grew that baby, your baby is perfect and beautiful. And so when you walk into any business, don't start talking about how ugly it is, which I've had people do, because you're going to make them mad and they're not going to want to negotiate, and they don't feel like they have to, unless, like I said, they're desperate. But and then you need to know how much cash you need. So if you are used to living on $2,000 a month, you need to look for cash flow that's going to provide at least $2,000 if you're putting your own money into it. If you're borrowing it, you need to look at $2,000 plus whatever there is to cover the loan. So that's cash flow. And in Arizona, we price businesses based on cash flow. It doesn't matter if they made $1 million. If they spent, $1 million, there's no cash flow. It's not worth anything. And then, like I said, never put out the full offer, and then, put it in writing. Now, most people have a broker that they're going to be working with that will take care of all your paperwork. But you can do a letter of intent through your attorney if you're working just with the seller. And so moving on, when you make an offer, you're going to be putting down a deposit. This says 1,000, but obviously it depends on the size of the business and how serious you are. If there's competition, you want to come in with a pretty good refundable deposit. And it's not like, again, real estate, you don't have a set inspection period, and then there's two things you can get your earnest money back with in real estate, and that's the inspection period and then financing. You can lose your money at any point throughout this, but it's a different situation. I mean, if there's a lot of reasons why a seller wouldn't want to keep your deposit, but it's always possible. And you're going to write the purchase price, what you're going to be able to put down on it. terms, if there's a seller finance, are usually between 3 and 10 years, and it's whatever the going rate is. You can come up with your own percentage, 6, 7, 8%, whatever. You know, what your monthly payments are, when it's going to, the payments are going to begin. And that'll all be written either in a purchase contract or a letter of intent, which is called an LOI. And then once that's accepted and you've agreed on a price, you're going to go through due diligence. And that's a very, very critical part of the whole process, because you're going to then be able to just deep dive and ask any questions you want of the seller at that point. You're going to look at all their financials. And if you still are confused about their financials, you know, dig deeper, go to their cash register. A lot of people don't show cash. You can actually, you know, there's a lot of, just be really creative when you're looking at proving their financials. I've had people go in and just watch customers coming in and out, you know, and then they kind of do the math. And so if you have a smaller business, like the smoke shops, they're all cash pretty much, and they don't want to show anything. So, you know, it's up to you to kind of decipher. Banks won't decipher. They need solid cash flow proof. And then look at the business structure, operations, go and visit, you know, hang out for days at a time. Look at all their vendors, all their contracts. This is going to be really important because you know, you want to know that customers are going to stay with you, that vendors are going to stay with you. Vendors are very, very key. And you want to, you know, try to meet with the vendors if that's appropriate. That's still a sensitive area. Keep in mind, everything is very sensitive. Vendors don't like this kind of transition. You know, look at their employee information. They may have legal issues that you need to uncover from previous activities. You want to look at their physical assets and their real estate, all their intellectual property. Just, you have the ability to walk in and really comb and scrutinize every inch of that business. And if you don't see what you need to see, but I will just interject here. I always used to say it's easier to say no to a business than it is to say yes, because you'll have all kinds of reasons to say no. You're going to see things that you're not going to like. But just keep in mind, those are negotiating points. You might know you will do better. I bought a business with my husband, a chiropractic clinic, and we knew that we could triple the business, and we did. And, you know, so, I mean, you may know your own abilities. So, but anyway, the due diligence is where you have an opportunity, again, to be able to, you know, walk away if you are seeing things that you don't like. So the offer contract will have contingencies. You need to, you know, approve of all the financials that you see. The lease is a real tricky part as well. Landlords don't like when they their tenants sell, because they don't know who is coming and they might fail and then they won't have their money. And they're typically the very last people that will be contacted. And so it's really important that you know, understand the lease, that you talk to the landlord. I would ask, is the landlord nice? I mean, that's a stupid question, kind of, but it's really important because a lot of landlords pre-COVID were really not flexible. They can raise the lease, they can shorten the term, they, you know, make sure the term is long enough, and that, you know what the incremental increases are going to be. Make sure the equipment is in good working condition, and you know, that the inventory that you're buying is actually inventory that you can use. It's typically with the sale. Sometimes it's not. If it's not with the sale, you can bring in an outside inventory specialist. Like a convenience store has a lot of inventory. The seller might say, well, I think I have, like, you know, $20,000 worth. Well, you can come in and have it counted and then verified. Another thing sellers will do is say, you know, I have all this inventory, but most of it's like 50 years old and you don't even want it. So, you know, kind of getting a value in your head about what makes sense to you is important. You know, the terms are accepted, that there's a non-compete. You don't want your seller going down the street and opening up, which I've had happen as well, another, you know, business that's going to take away all your clients, and that the transition period is enough time. You need to be able to have, I mean, we used to say like 30 days, but a lot of times it could be, 6 months, depending on the complexity of the business and the relationships that they've built. So if the seller is willing to stay on, number one, they have to train you. So you come up with a period of time that you feel comfortable with and that they feel comfortable with and can provide. So another thing to look for, as Amber said, is cash flow. So you're looking for financials that are, readable and that make sense, and that you can see that there's a cash flow. So you're going to be, walking into a cash flow. You should be able to maintain the cash flow unless there's, clients that are going to be dropping off, or whatever. And those are things that you need to look for in your due diligence. But also revenues, either inclining or declining. So, obviously with COVID, a lot of revenues are declining, but it used to be, that it was the kiss of death to have declining revenues. So you could have made, 300,000 cash flow, 200, and then 100. Well, a bank's going to look at that and they're not going to like that at all. So there might be a real good reason why it's declining and you might be comfortable with it. But a lot of times too, it's a negotiating point, because sellers will often say, all I have to do is flip a switch and do some marketing and voila, I could be making a ton of money. So can you. You never base that business on potential. It's what it's doing right now. If they want to go make it be, worth more, then let them do all the work and then sell it at that time. But it's usually because they're, it's not that easy. So, and then look at the customer base, kind of determine, who are these customers? Are they maybe going to fall out with a new owner? You want to look at the strength of the product and service in the future, the lease terms, again, vendor contracts, longevity, how long has it been in business? The longer the better, obviously. And, what is their social media networking out there as well? Look at their reviews, if they have reviews, and look at their website, make sure that technically they're a viable, company as well. And, if they have terrible reviews, that doesn't mean that they're a bad company. You just need to come in and be a better manager and nicer. But it is, again, another negotiating opportunity. This I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. This is asset allocation. What that means is that at the end of the sale, they're going to, somebody, and it's sometimes even the broker, but it could be the seller's accountant, somebody's going to allocate goodwill, equipment, personal property, real estate to benefit themselves, so that they're paying the least capital gains that they can. So goodwill and things like that are things that don't have that high of a tax rate. And typically it's not really something that you need to, it benefits more the seller, but you should take it to your accountant and make sure that they approve, and that everybody, so you're not, sometimes you sit down at the signing table and they pull out the asset allocation. You have never even seen it before. So go ahead and try to, get that out of the way as soon as possible. And then the transition is really, really important. So this is the time when the seller tells his employees, hey, I'm leaving, but this great buyer is going to take over. He's really nice, and you will be just very grateful in your presentation to them that, nobody's jobs are at risk, because they're going to be scared, that you're going to take things slowly. You're going to get to know everybody, and, there's not going to be any drastic changes, and that they're safe. Just make sure, because they'll jump ship if they're afraid. And also, like I said, to be really upbeat and positive, but and as well, assuming a very confident leadership role, because they, it's not a terrible thing. It could be really great actually for them to have a new owner, and it's all about just being really positive and enthusiastic, and like I said, confident. And so these are some of the things that you're going to need to do on the back, towards the end. Well, during, you could be doing a business plan, and once you get their financials, it'll be a lot easier. But also, how are you going to be licensed? Are you going to be an LLC, S corp, C corp, sole proprietor? How are they licensed? And typically, you won't be inheriting their business license, which is never recommended. So you'd be doing more what's called an asset sale. And, again, calling in your accountant to help you with that. And then just to kind of finalize, this is a book that you can get on Biz Buy Sell. It looks like it's free right now. I will tell you, I have met Ed Pendarvis. He's about, 90 now. So this book is a little old. He's got some gems in there. There's not a lot of books that I've seen on buying small businesses. So anyway, that might be something else that you can, purchase and look for. And so now we are, at the end of our presentation. And if anybody has any questions, I think Amber, I don't know if you answered the one question that was asked earlier about the.
No, we moved on to the next slide. There was one question that we got prior to the presentation in regards to, are there any funding for, he questioned about EIDL and let me go back. What government programs are available to help purchase a business? EIDL is not to purchase a business. That is emergency disaster loan. SBA, obviously, and then there's grants. There's a lot of grants that we have keep updated on our website. So that's something that I would say visit our website that we can give you access to. Now, we don't help you write the grants and things like that, but if you go to our website, you can see grants as well. But yes, SBA, but you go through the business. You go through a bank lender to get loans from the SBA. And then the paperwork requirements was the other question. And I kind of went through that as far as the financing, but as far as paperwork requirements, Nancy gave really good comprehensive lists in this presentation. So, it doesn't look like there's any questions that
We did just get one.
Well, we do have a couple, and I was looking for it, but it was in the chat box. So
yeah, we did just get one. If you're unemployed, can they approve you for a loan?
I would say that's incredibly situational, Joel, because if you're unemployed, it doesn't show that you're making any income. And that's kind of the basis of, you need to make sure that you're having some sort of income. And like I said earlier, I always tell my clients not to quit their day job because you have to be able to afford to pay back the loan. So typically, if you haven't filed your taxes, if you don't have income, it's really hard to get approved. It's not a no, but we would have to do alternate lending or something in that case. But for time's sake, Joel, thank you for your question. For time's sake, we're going to just kind of go and share with you that this is our request for counseling website right here. We start by doing initial counseling. Right now, we're doing everything via Zoom. Typically, it is by appointment only. Donna also put that in the chat box. The next step is to meet with your counselor on a regular basis for guidance, education, and support. And then we track your business goals. So make sure we're able to do that. Then remember that counseling is by appointment only. The next slide does show all of the new things that we have upcoming. I wish I can go into detail, but angel investing, Lou is amazing about talking about angel investing. And there's digital marketing. The Great Marketing Turnaround has been a really good session to be a part of as well, especially if you're buying a business. That would be awesome to go. But go to our website to register for those that are coming. It's very exciting. We love to educate our clients. And the next slide, there's so many things that a business owner needs. The website also provides COVID resources. Anything related to COVID funding. So our client, Derek, who asked that question earlier, he may be able to go to the website and look at COVID funding. Please visit our training event calendar, like I just said, and we encourage you to follow us on social media. I do always like to end our presentations with a comment, because one of my friends told me one time that the only bad conversation is a conversation that we didn't have. And I always think about that when I think about our business owners. Because we want Maricopa SBDC to have that conversation with you. We want to welcome you, and just keep that in mind. We are working remotely. So contact us for a counseling session at our website. And again, Donna put that in today. So we appreciate you, both Nancy and I, and Donna, I appreciate you.
Thank you. Today. Yes. Thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, and give us a call if you have, or sign up for counseling if you have any questions.
Yes.
Thanks, Amber.
Thank you so much.